And thank you again, sir. This
No,
means so much to me.
thank you for the invitation. It's an honor.
Praise be to Allah. Okay, here we go. And we are live. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to a very special edition of Off the Record on the People's Podcast. We have a great guest with us this morning, student European Regional Minister Abdul Hakeem Muhammad. First of all, assalamu alaikum, sir.
Alaikum salam, beloved.
Yes, sir. This means a great deal to myself, my family, and to our viewing and listening audience that you would take time out of your busy schedule to give us some information as well as some inspiration. First of all, when did you first hear the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, sir?
I first heard the teachings in 1986. I was traveling with a friend in a motor vehicle, and he put a tape in of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I wasn't cognizant of his existence in the world or anybody like him, to be quite honest with you, who, you know, was a public speaker, because I don't think up until that point I'd ever attended any gathering of any public speaker in my entire life. That's not something I did. And it wasn't something that my culture from the Caribbean or Jamaica rather, people would go to church, but it wasn't something that we were accustomed to. So I didn't really have a history of listening to public speakers. But when I heard the minister via audio cassette, TDK D90, it was the first time really listening to someone speak publicly.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. And why did you accept the teachings?
Well, I really had no choice. When I heard the voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, I knew I was listening to God coming through whoever was speaking.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It was just one of those, you know, unique moments where whatever the minister said when he was speaking, it just far superseded any intelligence that I had. You know, his words just took over my brain and my being. I had nothing to compare with what he was saying. So the only thing I could say was in response to how his words were affecting my soul, you know, which is, that's right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I couldn't reason with him because I had no intelligence on that level to reason with him. So my soul took over. My soul was animated. So I just had to go with what my soul was telling me to do. So it wasn't as if I had visited a mosque somewhere and listened to someone teach and then could accept at the end. There was no mosque or no study group here in the UK in 1986. So it was just a consummate moment in a motor vehicle with, when the friend had stepped out and left me in the car alone. And yeah, it was just a consummate moment. It was just very revolutionary, obviously, but it was just one of those moments. And the only thing I can really compare it to is a woman giving birth. You know, it's just one of those moments that, you know, if it goes well, you live.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, beautiful. And thank you all, people sending you the greetings and showing you love. Thank you all for continuing to watch the People's Podcast. And thank you, Brother Minister, for your honesty and your transparency. How did your parents feel once they knew that you were accepting the teachings?
Well, once, the good thing about it, I was actually living in my own apartment at the time. So when I finally got the tape from the brother who introduced me, because I was in his motor vehicle, I'm sure you probably heard the story a few times, where, you know, back in those days, we used to smoke weed. Yes, and we were going to the house, to somebody's house, to buy some poison. And as we were on our way there, he went into the house to pick up, you know, some leaves, and he left me in the car with with the audio cassette tape.
Yes, sir.
So,
yes, sir.
As I was there smoking and listening to the tape overrode my, my false high, if you will, or synthetic high.
Yes, sir.
So,
yes, sir.
But the sad thing about it is when the brother came back to the car, he was an elder for me. He's probably nearly twice my age, I would imagine. I must have been, I think, maybe 20 maximum at the time. I was 20 at the time. And he must have been 37 going on 40. And, you would call him in America an OG,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Rolling with the OG in the hood.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that's
yes,
really
sir.
the picture. And at the end of moving around for the day and listening to the tape after he returned, I asked him to borrow the tape. And he wouldn't give it to me. Like he felt, insulted that I would even ask to borrow such a prized possession of his. So here's a man who would give me weed to smoke, but he wouldn't give me the minister's tape to take home and listen to. So it took me about 3 weeks to build up the courage to ask him again. And he gave it to me with such contempt. Like he pushed it in my hand and said, just bring it back. But in the Caribbean, he said, just bring back my tía pieza.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I took it home fast, speed duplicated it, and brought it back to him the following day. And I think his apprehension of giving me the tape was that he knew that he was going to lose, a buddy and a smoking partner, a raving partner. He knew I was gone, that I was touched in a way that was different from the way how he was touched. So but Allah used him as an angel at the time. So the effect was obviously very deep at the time. And I clearly was waiting for that tape in my life because, whatever I was doing, I didn't enjoy mastery, or any form of real buy-in. I knew at that time, everything was temporal. There was no real anchor in my life.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
In hearing the minister, that was the anchor. That was it. Not that I was looking for change, but what came was so magnificent and so comprehensive that there was no way, I wasn't going to drill down into that. And that was the Madison Square Gardens lecture that he gave. Such a profound effect. But the unfortunate aspect of that time, we're talking about 1986, what's that, 34 years ago? They're talking about, I only had 90 minutes of a 3-hour lecture. So you'd be so into it, and then you knew that point was coming.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I think it was years before I actually got the completed lecture. But I think about maybe 6-7 months after that, I met a friend of mine when I tried to share the tape with him. He told me that his mother had a tape, and his mother, he must have told his mother that I was, listening to this tape, and his mother gave him a tape to give to me, which was the Los Angeles Forum.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So strong, brother. That was like Madison Square Gardens was like a left. And
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right. Out cold, brother.
Praise.
I remember sitting in a room, just turning off the lights and just being in the dark, listening to that tape and those tapes. So yeah, that was the birth process.
Praise be to Allah. Excellent. Thank you all for watching. I just want to give you some of the greetings from the brothers. Sister, Amani Abdullah says that tape was real, right? Akil Gum says, my minister, assalamu alaikum. Brother Janelle says, peace, gods. Truly enjoy your work, Brother Minister Abdul Hakeem Muhammad. Sister Nicola Taliba says, assalamu alaikum, family. Sister Teresa, my sister Miriam, Brother Salam Muhammad. A lot of people send the greetings. Brother Tony Muhammad says, assalamu alaikum, listening from Kuwait. Wa alaikum salam, sir. And praise be to Allah for everyone else who was viewing and watching. My next question for you, Brother Minister, is if you didn't see anybody there, how did you establish a study group, then become a mosque, and then become a minister?
It was a very intense process, to be quite honest with you, because at that time, as I said, I knew of nobody else in the country. And
Yes.
there was a great friend of mine who left London and he went to live in Bridgeport, Connecticut. So because there wasn't a nation of Islam here, I went and studied and prayed and, done what I could to maintain my spirit down at one of the local Orthodox mosques, where what was intriguing to me is when the minister was speaking during Madison Square Gardens, he kept on referring to this book, Holy Quran, this book.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I wanted what he was reading.
Yes,
and
sir.
it
Yes,
took
sir.
me forever. I couldn't get the book, brother. I went to libraries, wherever I went, couldn't get the book. And one day I was determined, I'm not going back home until I get this book. And visited, as many libraries as I could. Was on public transport, didn't have a car at that time. And the closest I could come to the book was a novel called Koran, Koran.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I met a brother who was Orthodox Muslim, and he took me to the Orthodox mosque. And they gave me a Yusuf Ali translation of the Quran. And that was the first time I actually got a chance to read the Quran. And from there, a friend of mine, Brother Carl, his name is, he went to Bridgeport to spend some time. And as he was in Bridgeport, he was getting his hair cut by one of the brothers, Brother Sean Muhammad, in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Shout out to Brother Sean. He's a great barber and a great brother. So as he was cutting Brother Carl's hair, he was actually putting Islam in his head simultaneously.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So brother accepted and became an FOI in Bridgeport. So by the time, so even though before he left, I was practicing the Islam, but my Nation of Islam exposure was obviously limited to the 2 tapes that I had, because there was no mosque, there was no FOI class, there was no Sunday lecture or Wednesday lecture. It literally was just you and your tapes. So he went and he was in the mosque in Bridgeport for a good few months. I don't know I can't remember how long, but he was there long enough to learn how to drill and to know our ways.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So when he came back to London, he looked me up because he knew I was obviously a Muslim. And I never forget, it was during the month of Ramadan. And we went to an Orthodox mosque to break our fast. And brother started to, get into conversation with the Orthodox Muslims and started some controversial discussion. And I remember pulling him to the side and saying to him, brother, we can't have that kind of conversation here, because we got to come here and close our eyes and pray.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's pointless making enemies here, because we got to close our eyes tomorrow. So
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So anyway, we went back to my apartment, started speaking, and he was obviously well informed about the rules, the regulations, the policies, procedures, protocols. And we decided from that point that we were going to push the minister's message. So we had a public meeting in a place called Balham Library, where he called he invited all of his friends. I invited all of mine. And it must have been at least 40 odd persons there. And we brought our television. There was back in those days, used to have a Sony Trinitron television, these big box TVs. They weighed a ton, So we used to put it on top of the table, or we put it on top of the table, broadcast the message to our friends, and their response was magnificent, absolutely magnificent. And that really was the beginning, because from the first time we had that meeting, then from that day henceforth, we just started having meetings. And I never forget when the tape was coming to a conclusion, and we were standing outside the doors with a pane of glass. We were both reflecting, like, who's going to go and close the meeting? I said to her, I'm certainly not going in there and speaking. And, he did it. He went and he said a few words and closed the meeting. and we had t-shirts for sale and different things and just vibed and networked. And then the following week, we met in a place called Brixton Enterprise Center, formerly known as the Bon Marsh, which was a building that the government and local council pretty much gave to Black people to start businesses after the riots in 1985. It was a business center. So we hired a room in there. And the second week, we showed I think it was the Los Angeles Forum video. And then the brother wore jeans and I had on a suit. And he said, oh, I can't close the meeting this week because I've got on jeans and I'm inappropriately dressed, so you're going to have to do it. So I closed the meeting in prayer that Wednesday, I think it was, and the rest is history. We just kept going from there.
Yes, sir. Praise be to God.
We met, he was given the contact of Brother Michael Muhammad because he was in another part of town called East London. And he had formerly met with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and had a small group of believers in East London, but neither of us knew we existed. So brother had brother's number. So from there we connected and brother started to come down to Brixton where we were and attend. We worked together to have these Sunday and I think and Wednesday meetings. So that's how we really discovered who had actually been awoken in London at that time. It was through Brother Carl, who came back from Bridgeport and really was used to connect these dots.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you. And thank you all for continuing to watch. My question for you, sir, is what type of faith? We have been, many may say, spoiled to see the Most High Louis Farrakhan physically in our cities, just constantly looking at him. For you to be across the pond, if you will, and the Most High Louis Farrakhan not be able to physically go, how has that affected you in your ministry and the believers? And why isn't the Most High Louis Farrakhan able to come see you all?
Well, there are pros and cons to that. And the pro is that when you just have the raw tape, and you don't know what the man looks like, you don't know whether his skin is dark, his skin is light, you don't know anything. So you're unbiased. You're just drinking in the principles and the wisdom of what you're hearing. There's no bias there. And so it was a blessing, to be quite honest with you, because it was as if I was just in a womb with him, because I was just listening to audio. It wasn't visual, it was audio. And the audio had such an effect that, I don't know whether things would have been the same if I had gone and met him in person, gone through a check procedure, was in
yes, sir.
In the same place with thousands of persons. I don't know what that would have been. I know the words would have obviously had the same effect, but the mere fact that I was in a womb just with his voice.
Yes, sir.
And his voice, God working through him on me was able to bring my self-accusing spirit alive and bring me to spiritual birth. Then the benefit of that is that I'm not dependent, or those who are birthed like that, they're not dependent upon the physicality, if you will.
Yes,
they're focused on principle. So whether they're in London or whether they're in Saudi Arabia, whether they're in Africa or the Caribbean, the life is activated by principle.
Yes,
so
sir.
As
yes, sir.
says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was God.
Yes, sir.
So the Word dwelled amongst men until it became flesh. So the more we fed on the Word and started to live in accordance with it, then the Word became flesh, proving that the resurrection and the process of it is more than just a man speaking. It shows us that there's no reason to worship the flesh of the man, because if you live in accordance with the principles, then you can reflect that man wherever you are.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that was the pro, if you will. As I said, a con can be, you get so used to the physicality that when the physicality is no longer there, then that becomes a trial for you. So I've always been of the mind that at some point, obviously, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan will depart from us and go to his Father and be healed and be empowered to come back for
Yes, sir.
the second phase of his work. So
Yes, sir.
his physical absence is not necessarily a trial for myself and those over here, because we've never had him. Like, it's just something that is not a trial for us, because as long as we've got the word, then we've got him. You know?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. As long as we got the word, we got him. So there are pros and cons, and I thank Allah for the process in which I have come to life on a spiritual level. And I'm sure those who live over here can attest to the same.
Okay, beautiful. Praise be to Allah. And thank you all. You have a lot of comments. I can't come to all of you all right now, but I see your comments. A lot of people are sending you love, and I have a lot of
Thank you.
admiration for you and the work of yourself, your family, and the believers. I want to make sure I thank your family for their sacrifice. Thank you for your sacrifice, and thank the believers for their sacrifice as well.
Thank you,
my next question is, because you just broke it down in such a spiritual term, how long did it take, or when did you go from seeing the Most Honorable Louis Farrakhan as maybe a speaker or an activist to someone who was in fact divinely guided?
From the first day.
Okay, beautiful. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I didn't grow into any of that. It was immediate. It was on first impact, to be quite honest with you. Because as I said, I don't come from a religious type of background. Religion is not something I do. I'm not for that. You know, I'm not for that. So the effect that he had on me, I know it transpired religion as we have been taught religion. So, and Black activism and all of this, it from day one, I knew it transcended all of that. As I said, I give thanks, brother, because that was over 34 years. And by Allah's grace, I haven't, dropped out of this process up to this point, by Allah's grace. Regardless, I could be here sometimes in the UK during my journey, even as an official, and 6 months could pass and somebody doesn't call me from the US. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes,
so
sir, yes.
I'm not dependent upon that level of connectivity, as long as I got the word and I'm able to know what he wants, and I've been blessed to be connected directly to him in his office since 1991. Was the first time, I believe, we went over. 91, 92 was the first time we went over and met with him. He invited us in 92 for a delegation of us, sat with him, and he really laid out the vision and, really foretold our futures, if we could stay the course. So it's been a very profound journey, to be quite honest with you. Very profound journey.
Praise be to Allah. My next question is, how come, what is the rule? What did that they told you that the Most Honorable Louis Farrakhan couldn't come? What are their law?
Well, he was banned or excluded the same year I was woken up in 1986. But I wasn't political like that. So I didn't know at the time that, he was excluded like that. But when I was listening to some of the audio tapes and it came to my knowledge, then it had always grown in me that this is something we have to overcome, because,
yes, sir.
We share the teachings, and we're sharing it. People were obviously very forthcoming. But I always knew in my mind that if he came for one day, he would be able to do in one day more than we could probably do in a lifetime.
Yeah, okay.
So I was always of the mind of him coming physically, because, as a divine servant, England has played such a major role in the destruction of us as a people. Specifically when you look at the Black man and woman in the United States, you wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the transatlantic slave trade headed by the British Empire. It was the Brits,
Yes, sir.
who dropped our family off there after going
Yes, sir.
through the Caribbean. So all of that to say, slavery in America started with these same people here. And I was always of the mind that they, would need, or they should get a direct message from the messenger of God, because even if America is dealt with, you still got the mother of these beasts right here, because England is the mother. She gave birth to all of these, monsters who have
Yes,
got
sir.
to
Yes, sir.
the landscape of Europe and the world. But the mother, the evil mother, she's here, He is. So yeah, so I was always of the mind that she needs to have a good talking to,
Praise be to Allah. And thank you for giving her a good talking, sir. And speaking of that, have you ever faced fear because of that, being there by yourself, or without, of course, God, but by yourself and building it?
Yeah, I've actually never felt by myself, if I'm perfectly honest with you, because I know the rightness of what we stand for. I'm just not jaded in any way, shape, or form, or confused.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
With the enormity of what we've been so fortunate to be a part of. And because of the fortunateness of being plucked, if you will, from amongst our people to come into intimacy with the Messiah. Like,
yes, sir.
There's no fear, brother, like where that is concerned, no, not like that, not at all. Because I said, I've driven in Chicago, brother, and, being around the corner from the Messiah's home, and I've looked around and seen people and said, man, there are people who live in the neighborhood who don't even know the Messiah lives here.
Yes,
and here
sir.
I am traveling all the way 4,000 miles, and I'm blessed to know who he is. So I know that's just not an accident,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I give thanks, brother. I give thanks.
Praise be to Allah. Okay, and thank you for your great testimony and transparency. We love you too, Brother Elijah Farrakhan sends his love. Brother Janelle sends his love. Sister Jadea's teaching. Sister Rashida says thank you. Amen. Sister Amatullah. Brother Joseph sends his love. My sister Naima, Sister Mimi, Brother Calvin Pep. Brother Damien, Brother Urban. So many people are giving you their love. Thank you all very much for watching and continue to speak the podcast. Now, Brother Minister, when I was growing up, drilling and seeing you all, I was very impressed with the way you all carried yourself, such dignity and pride, and always looked like y'all would have money, and y'all just came to, y'all came to show everybody what London came to bring to the table. We didn't refer to you as Minister Abdul Hakeem at the time. How did you receive your holy name, and how did you feel about that, sir?
It was obviously one of the greatest moments of my spiritual journey. But ironically, when I first registered officially in 92, I think my letter was accepted. Back in those days, my mother always called me Larry. She never referred to me as Hillary. It was Larry. That's when I went to school. All of my childhood friends know me as Larry, just like they know the minister is G.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They all knew Caribbean people always have a nickname, So they knew me as Larry. So when I wrote my first letter, the name I put on the letter was Larry. And when we were blessed to meet the minister in 92, and I came to the knowledge that what we should do is to put the name that's on our birth certificate on the Savior's letter. So I mentioned it to him at the time that the name I registered in is Larry, but the name on my birth certificate is Hillary. And he said to me, oh, brother, I'm not going to have you go back to London and do that again. And then there was a sister who was at the table, and she had done the same thing. And sister said to the minister, oh, she's done the same thing. And then another brother came and said he had done the same thing. So I had gone away with it, right? So then he said, oh, everybody just go back and redo it. So I had to redo it in the name Hillary. And I explained to him, brother minister, this is a name that I don't like.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't represent me. It doesn't.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's not something that I'm accustomed to having people call me worse on my spiritual journey. He said to me, oh, brother, I don't see that as an ugly name, but Allah has a better name for you. So I was of the mind that come 2 weeks, a month.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I would get this better name, right? So my spirit was calm because I saw it as short-lived. Let a few people call me Hillary, and that's the end of that. But, you know, fast forward, you know, 31 years later,
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Married Hillary. So, no, it was less than that. It's about 20 odd years. So be that as it may, so when the time, and then I started to obviously enjoy wearing the name Hillary because it means one who's eternally joyous. And I always try to keep my spirit fresh and myself fresh by being as joyous as possible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So as a consequence of that, I started to enjoy the name because I'm obviously was obviously the only Hillary Muhammad on the planet. You know?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I was beginning to enjoy the name. One day we were blessed. I think we were in a laborers meeting. In fact, we were in the minister had spoken, and the minister had spoken, and we were in his suite the morning after he had spoken. I'm sure it was a Savior's Day. And as we were in his suite the morning, he was going around the room, and then he asked me a question. And this was a time when he was really lambasted Hillary Clinton. And whenever he would raise the name Hillary, I'm like, God, I hate being associated with that woman.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So when we were in the room, to cut a long story short, you know, he said, brother, I have a better name for you. And I think it must have been within 3-4 months after that, I was blessed. I was going to give him the greetings at the end of an evening. And as I was going towards him to greet him, he sort of stopped and stepped back, and I said, okay, what is this? I've never experienced. What did I do, you know?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But then he stopped and closed his eyes and then started sort of looking up. And so I stopped dead, obviously. And then he shook his head like this and nodded, and then opened his eyes and said, Brother Hakeem. And then I'll never forget one of his sons, Brother Yassine, he said, Brother Hakeem.
Yes, that's a good impression too.
So it was a very, very beautiful day. And as I said, it's just one of those moments. It's just like a birth. It's just, you know, very difficult to try and quantify its magnitude. But, you know, it's just one of those moments, very difficult to put into words, to be quite honest with you. But great, great, great blessing. Great blessing. Praise
be to Allah. I just want to and thank you again, sir. And thank you all for watching. Sister Captain Shanasia says, we know separation is the key. However, is there an impact of the Black Lives Matter movement in the UK?
Very much so. It's actually sweeping throughout Europe. Very big presence by way of what people are actually doing. They are expressing their frustration under the name Black Lives Matter without really doing their research into what Black Lives Matter really represents and what it really stands for.
Yes, sir. Yes,
so people are really just using it as a canopy or an umbrella to express and give vent to their frustration. Now that over £1 million, I think, has been donated to Black Lives Matter. Now people are starting to ask questions, what is this movement and how are these funds going to be used? So people are somewhat starting to ask a lot of questions now, but the movement has been somewhat successful in galvanizing people and giving people an umbrella to express their frustration.
Praise be to Allah. And speaking of pounds, for those of us who have not made it to London yet, or could you explain what a pound is in comparison to an American dollar?
Well, pound is the British currency.
Yes, sir.
When the UK joined the European Union, the condition generally of joining the EU is that you have to forsake your own currency and start using the euro. But the British, being who they are, they were able to negotiate, the maintenance of their own currency. So their currency is, as you rightly said, the pound, which is known as the pound sterling. And its value traditionally has been stronger than the dollar, but ever since Mr. Trump has been in power, your dollar has been very strong here in Europe, and very strong against the pound, to the point where really nearly we're at parity. Well, $1 for a pound, but not at the moment. You get about $1.20 for every £1 that you have. So yeah, it's just a British currency. Yes, sir.
And thank you, sir, for being so knowledgeable and teaching us. Sister Jadea wants to know, are there believers in other European countries aside from the UK and France?
Absolutely. What we have done this year, we've registered a couple of believers in Serbia. We've registered believers in Holland. We have registered believer in Denmark. We have registered believer and believers, where else in Europe? Various different places. But for instance, every Friday when we have study group, we have believers there from all different parts of Europe, including Luxembourg, Switzerland, Luxembourg, Switzerland, Denmark, Serbia, Paris, Germany. We have believers there. You can pretty much go through most of these European countries. There are people there who follow the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. My job is the Black version of David Livingstone. My job is to go and find
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And connect them to their Messiah. That's my job. So yeah, we have a very vibrant group of European-based believers here. So yeah, the nation is on the move. We're actually working on trying to deliver 50 countries to the Honorable Louis Farrakhan for his message on Saturday.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Already achieved, I'm sure it's 28, nearly 30 have already signed up to,
yes, sir,
to give, the message and to share the message throughout those countries. So yeah, we're definitely about the business of distributing divine guidance, not just throughout Europe, because most people who live here in Europe, their families are either from West Africa, parts of North Africa. We have believers in South Africa. Yesterday, I spoke to a Zambian group. Over 1,500 persons viewed it and has liked it just within 24 hours. So our reach is really extended, not just throughout Europe, but really into those Caribbean and African countries that the people who live in Europe are originally from. Pardon me. So yeah, it's a massive field over in this part of the world.
Praise
massive.
And thank you, sir, for your work. Countries, praise be to Allah, that's amazing. Have you received any pushback or opposition to the teachings in your tenure as a minister?
Well, pretty much every day, huh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But the pushback is, when you live in England, England, this is the country that popularized spies. James Bond is the most famous.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Debonair spy there is. So
yes, sir.
here's a man who has become so popular because he has a license to kill on behalf of Her Majesty.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So
yes, sir.
if they show you the kind of espionage and the way in which they have gone throughout the world and destabilized governments, then
sir.
if God's nation is growing within the bowels of, that same nation who has conquered continents. Because you have to appreciate, the British took nearly over a third of the world.
That's right. Yes, sir.
Over a third of the world speaking English, brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This little island. And by Allah's grace, He has planted the nation of Islam here, and with all of the winds that have come against us, and they are fierce winds, He has blessed us to be deeply rooted enough that rather than, be growing in weakness, we're actually, or be dissolving into weakness, we're growing in strength. During this COVID-19 period, we have found all of our meetings not just doubled and quintupled or quadrupled. They've grown 4-5-fold. So we still meet on a Wednesday. We meet on a Friday. We have 11 study group coordinators now. So on a Friday, we have a massive Zoom meeting.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But the work continues. The work goes on. We can't meet in person. Hey, Allah gave the enemy this technology so that they could build it, so that we could enjoy it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
As much as they talk about, that they have a UFO down in Area 51, I think it is. As the minister, those ships don't crash. So if they have one, Allah gave it to them.
That's right. That's right.
To extract technology so that they could build software like this. For whose benefit? For ours, and ultimately the minister's next week, Saturday. Because if it wasn't for this level of technology, he couldn't have a message to the world, because the infrastructure wouldn't be there. So Allah in His wisdom, He allowed Steve Jobs and all of these individuals to be born.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Build these platforms, because ultimately they're His servants.
Yes, sir. Allahu Akbar. I agree. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Beautiful. And thank you all for continuing watching. Brother Minister, I have a quick commercial break to announce the sponsors of this podcast and this month's podcast. My brother Rashad and brother Jamal, Street Premiere Video Production. Thank you all. They have a 4K drone camera. They shoot films and television and do photo shoots. Reach out to Street Premiere. My sister Miriam, ABC I Love Me coloring book, as well as children book, which is on Amazon. Thank you very much, Sister Miriam. My other sister Naima with Stay On Point Dance Academy, LLC. She teaches ballet virtually to all of the young sisters across the country. Thank you very much. Reach out to Stay On Point if you want your daughters to learn some ballet. Supreme Men's Clothing in St. Louis, Missouri, 40835 West Florissant Avenue, 314-528-5555. That brother will keep you dressed in fresh clothing. Thank you very much for your sponsorship as well. Brother Ronald Muhammad in Phoenix, Arizona, BMW Entertainment. They do event planning all across the country. If you need a bow tie, Brother Kenneth Muhammad, the bow tie maker extraordinaire, 917-337-1380. Reach out to him. Our brother who I just saw on Facebook today, Brother Todd X McGraw, Supreme Team Insurance, 803-521-2787. He gives you some insurance. My father's book, A Soldier in the Movement of Christ, AbdulSharif.com. Thank you very much, Dad, for your sponsorship as well. Sister Shelly Hassan, Exodus, A New Way of Life, CreditRestoration.com. Thank you very much. If you need some credit restoration, reach out to our sister. Sister Serena Woodford in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, designsofcomposure.com. They do natural hair and skin products. Standing on the Pentagon and Needles, a boy's journey from indifference to making a difference. Brother John Ali on Amazon. I'm coming right back to you, Brother Minister. Raising Black Millionaires, the flashcards from Sister Tia Muhammad, teaching economic empowerment and development. And last but not least, my 2 books, which are Amazon. I'm very proud. No Father, No Excuse. It is on Amazon. Finally, thank you all very much. And my children's book, Cleopatra, which is on Amazon as well. If you would like to donate to the People's Podcast, Cash App, the People's Podcast, so we can keep going and getting this great information as well as inspiration. Okay, Brother Minister, we're right back to you.
Yes.
Brother Michael Muhammad says, praise be to Allah. Great interview. This is life. Hey, thank you, Brother Michael. And we love the work that you're doing in Columbus as well. Sister Naima says, so true. Brother Tyrone, assalamu alaikum. Great interview, brother. All praise due to Allah. They keep, Brother Tony said he's near you, sir, and would like to come visit soon. Thank you, Sister Shanasia. Thank you, Brother Michael. Thank you, Brother Mark. A lot of the believers are just sending love and a lot of heart signs. Thank you all very much as well. My next question for you, sir, is how did the Million Man March, what was it like leading up, coming from the UK, and how did it impact you personally?
Well, because of the objective of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan was to reach a wide audience, I didn't travel to Washington at that time. So we worked, the various mosque and study groups worked together here, and we put on different satellite and different ways in which we broadcasted the message of the Million Man March. So, but the impact, obviously, as you know, the message and the demonstration changed the world, you know, and the world cannot recover back in foolishness as a result of what took place on that day. So obviously fantastic, very revolutionary, and we give Allah thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah. So we give Allah thanks, you know. But as I said, we weren't. I wasn't personally there, but the anniversary of the Million Man March, I think it was the Millions More movement.
Yes, sir.
I was there in the Million Family March, all of the subsequent ones.
Yes, sir.
I have been in attendance, and it's just been a great journey to have left here on so many occasions and been right there with yourselves in person in the US. It's been a great journey, you know, a great journey, because I was blessed to be invited also, along with the other regional ministers, to be with the Honorable Louis Farrakhan on July the 4th of this coming Saturday. But because of the restrictions that have been imposed now because of COVID-19, there's no European can actually travel to America. So I give thanks that when the doors were open, that I did ensure that I was there. So now the doors are closed for a moment. Only Allah knows if they will ever be open back like that for travel. So we don't know. We don't know, but we give thanks.
Speaking of the pandemic that is going on, how has it affected you and the believers over there?
Again, it really has been a blessing in disguise, because it's allowed us to move away from, you know, just meeting in person and moving more of our activities online. And now, you know, as I said, our Wednesday, our Friday, our FOI class, our processing class, everything has grown in number and expression. So everything is a lot more fruitful. It's a lot more dynamic. And if I'm perfectly honest with you, I can't see us going back in a building on Friday for study group, brother, when we can stay at home and enjoy interacting. I think we're pretty much done with that model.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This is the way forward.
Yes, sir. Okay, my next question is, what do you do for fun, Brother Minister?
Teach Islam.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Just vibing, really. I'm a big gym goer, so I usually work out, 5-6 times a week. I'm really big on that. It's one of the real losses of having these gyms closed down during COVID-19. It's a great loss, but it's allowed me to finish my studio in my garden. So now I've just moved the gym to the garden. So
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
pull
sir.
up
Praise
bars
be to
out
Allah.
there, the whole 9 yards. But really, I enjoy that. Used to enjoy going out and eating in different places, obviously unannounced, and travel, obviously, to beautiful scenic spots in Europe. Europe is a very beautiful place by way of scenery. So obviously love listening to music, also swimming, so more fun in the name of doing things that benefit me, as opposed to letting the little hair that I have left down.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
So
sir.
yeah, more like that. And now I have these 6 grandchildren, seeing a few of them at, different times, or seeing them at different times is also a great blessing. Because when they're all together,
I can imagine, Lord have mercy. Yes,
you have to redecorate the house by the time they leave.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And okay, that's a great question, Rashad. My brother has a question for you. I'm coming right to that. My next question for you is, speaking of music, the Beatles, a great rock band, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, so much has come in rock and roll history. Are there any new artists that we maybe not, up on in America now? Any current artists that you are listening to that we didn't catch on to yet?
Well, I'm probably not the best one to ask because, as older people, we just listen to the same music every day
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
that we were
Yes, sir.
listening
Yes,
to 20 years ago. So
yes,
the
sir.
only real artist that has really made a major difference for me is I love Afro beats. I love Wizkid.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I love Wizkid. So Wizkid, we have another brother who we're very close to. He's called Fuse, ODG. He's Afro beats again, very beautiful music. So it's only really that which really jumps out at me. But us elders, man, we like to listen to George Benson and the Whispers.
Okay, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. Okay.
Teddy P.
Yes, okay. I thought it would be more like Elton John and stuff because of like England, but all right, yes, sir. But Teddy
again, Elton these kind of guys are legends.
Yes, sir.
Sade, legend.
Yes,
but
sir.
they don't make enough music anymore. Like Sade, she just likes to keep everybody on edge. So her vibe is on making every 10 years,
Yes, sir. Yes,
disappears.
Sir.
So
yes,
yeah.
Sir. My brother Rashad wants to know, how was it meeting Michael Jackson?
It was great. I remember when brother from Los Angeles, I was actually at a health club in a hotel in central London. And brother called me from the airport and said that they've just canceled Michael's room at the Dorchester. Dorchester, I think, was owned by the King of Bahrain. And when Michael was there the time previous to his coming, he had signed napkins and had thrown them out of his suite window, and the people ran in the road, nearly killed themselves to try and get the napkins.
Yes, sir.
So I think the insurance company, they were going to cancel the insurance of the hotel if they had allowed him to stay there again, right? So they had canceled his reservation when he had landed at Heathrow Airport. So brother called me out of the blue. And as I said, it was just so coincidental that I was leaving out of this particular 5-star hotel. And he said, Brother Minister, I need to organize and secure a room for Michael. I'm here at Heathrow Airport with him and we got nowhere to stay. So So I went back into the hotel, spoke to the general manager and asked him if he had the suites, major suites available. He only had the penthouse at the top of the hotel. And
Yes, sir.
he took me up there and it was available. And so I gave brother the figures, how much it would cost. And he said it was fine. So within 20 minutes, they were in the hotel and we were going up to the suite. So it was a great blessing to meet brother. And it was great to meet a man who you can, relate to directly, so you can dismiss all of the rumors and all of the propaganda.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Levied at people, because Michael ain't that man who they say he is.
I agree.
I remember we were in the elevator with him, and his son Prince was acting up, and he slapped Prince in the head like any black father would their son,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Prince, he straightened up immediately.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But the way they portray Mike is that, he wouldn't just straighten you out if you cross him,
Yes, sir.
So,
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And a few other experiences we had. And I remember being with him when he went to collect his award for Thriller. And we were in a particular area, VIP area. Of this.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And Tommy Hilfiger must have knocked on the door and he wanted to meet Michael before he went up and collected his award. So as I answered the door and I told Brother Bashir, I said to him, there's Tommy Hilfiger's at the door and he wants to meet Michael. And he said, Michael hates Tommy Hilfiger.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So we had some great times, and it was a great honor and privilege to meet brother.
Yes, sir. Okay, beautiful, beautiful. You got a lot of comments, and thank you very much. My next question for you is: speaking of your grandchildren, how has being a grandfather impacted your life?
I try not to allow it because I still see myself as a young man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Trying to be no grandpa, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, I try to just continue with my life, but it's a great blessing because I have 5 grandsons, and 1 granddaughter. So, one of the brothers said to me today, "Oh, you got the soldiers coming." I said, "No, more so corporate directors,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
More corporate directors, because we can't just raise our sons just to be soldiers without them being soldiers, protecting something worth soldiering for,
Yes,
so
sir.
We want our boys to be corporate, and run these boardrooms and
sir.
The CEOs of these major corporations. That's how we're going to educate them to make sure that, they will have soldiers with them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's the spirit. What advice would you give to future husbands?
Well, I would say to be mindful of how you select a wife, and vice versa with the sisters. Be careful how you accept a proposal for marriage, because if a brother is going to choose a woman for life, then you've got to be clear as a man, that your vision is such for your life. Your vision is such that you can see 40, 50 years henceforth. Where you want to be. If you're 30, 25 at the moment, you know where you want to be when you're 65. And you've broken that down, or that 60 years, that 40 years, into periods of decades. Every 10 years, you reach a milestone and you've got it figured out. And then once you've got it figured out where you want to be in 40 years, if you're 25, or so, 30, then you have to find a woman who is able to help you to meet those goals.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Years. And, we have an old saying, no nation can rise any higher than this woman. But
yes, sir.
we don't know how developed the nation is in the woman who we may seek, to be our spouses or to be our wives.
Yes, sir.
If the nation is not risen in her, then she's not going to be able to help you to fulfill your vision, And likewise, a woman's going to be very dissatisfied if she marries on to a man who doesn't have any vision and there's nothing of a substantive nature for her to help to build out so that she can secure herself and secure her children that she will have for her husband. So choosing, to me, is the most important part, that courtship, because if you decide tomorrow that you want to go and apply to a bank for a loan, for a mortgage, for a home, and they offer you a 25-year loan, they're going to ask you some very intrusive questions.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The application form,
yes,
right?
Sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
and
sir.
they will call you in for an interview because they want to see your past. They want to know your present accurately so that they can project and get sight so that they can see into the future, at least into 25 years henceforth.
Yes, sir.
So we generally don't have that kind of conversation. And if we have the conversation, it's just that, it's conversation, not with seriousness to it, knowing that I pull the trigger and get married to you, and then, the lifespan of your intelligence and your wisdom and your aspirations is only 12 months, 24 months, 3 years, then that's not nation building. That's the problem, because too many of us just really want to have sex. We really don't want to have a long-term relationship. We really just want to have sex. And I would advise our brothers and sisters, don't get married just to have sex. It's too much of a commitment. Yes, sir. Do you understand what I mean? Too much of a commitment, because it's been scientifically proven that when a man or woman is lustful, that if they have a cold shower, it actually doses down the lust. So it's not just, words that people say when people are in the heat. They say, go take a cold shower, you're too hot.
Yes, sir.
It actually works. It actually cools you down and dissipates the lust within the individual. So I would say, brothers, if you're desirous of a wife, but underneath it all is just that you're attracted to the sister. You want to know what's under the dress.
Yes.
Just it's not worth getting married to find that out. It really isn't. So you have to increase, your desire to be with that sister and just take it out of the physical, because we don't have a lot of money as a people. Sometimes we're very limited to only minimal areas of pleasure. And as a people, we one of our greatest extractions of pleasure is the sex act.
Yes,
where
sir.
If we were businessmen and we were engaged in mergers and acquisitions and, building out companies from the early stages all the way up to, launching these companies on one of the various stock exchanges around the world, we would know what true pleasure is like.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We don't enjoy pleasure on those levels. We relegate pleasure to one area, and that area has caused most of the problems that we're still suffering from today.
Yes, sir.
So we just have to be mindful, because there's nothing worse in truth than to get married and then to have children, and then the marriage is broken up, and then you say you're a member of a nation and you're down with solving the problem, but here we are creating more problems for somebody else to come and solve. So it's a form of hypocrisy to say you're in a nation and you're marrying and divorcing and leaving, or creating more one-parent families. We're having a talk this week, Wednesday, on male and female relationships. And one of my recommendations is, that we have to have a moratorium on this. And the brothers really and sisters need to be interviewed by those who really is not going to take no nonsense from them. And if they're not eligible, And if they have a history of constantly, you know, marrying, divorcing, having children, not maintaining their children, then we've got to forbid them from marrying anybody. We've got to blacklist them. Just like if you don't pay back your loans, if you borrow money from institutions, they blacklist you. No matter where you want to go, no one will borrow you money. So you got to go and find friends and then rip them off. You know?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
To any legal institutions. And we've got to be like that if we're going to go forward. We've got to, you know, just encourage brothers and sisters to hold off until you're actually in a position to do this and do it right, because it's not a thing you really want to do wrong, you know. So no need to rush. Take your time. Find other areas wherein you can extract pleasure, you know. And once you find these other areas you can extract pleasure, then when the time is right, as a man, when your vision is complete, then and only then do you even know what kind of woman you need, you know. And the kind of woman you need, once your plan has evolved, then you go and headhunt that woman. You don't just randomly, I like her nothing. She's got to fit the profile that you know you need in order to achieve your objective.
Yes,
so
sir.
You're
yes,
looking
sir.
for a particular type, and that particular type might not be in your city. So you may have to travel far and wide because you're looking for a particular type. We're like that. When we want a pair of sneakers, you know exactly what sneakers to buy. It's a particular type.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And if we're like that with material things, then surely we have to be more like that with a spiritual creature. You with me? A spiritual being who's going to be your name. You really want to hang out with this person for 30, 40 years? Are you sure about that? Are you sure?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
sir. Due diligence. Because we can't continue to get married just because the sister got pregnant when we were playing. So to cover the non-consensual, or to cover the fornication, we get married to cover it. Man, it's not a good reason.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know, if you messed up, you messed up, but don't cover it with something where you're going to put God's name on it. You know, continue on in your name with what you were doing, but to put God's name on it and say, till death us two part.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Like, till death. I want to die with you. So be careful, you know, and make sure that this is the person who I want when I die, you know, or if she dies, I want to die the next day after her. She's my soulmate. She's my
Yes, sir. Yes,
not
sir.
for her body. It's got to be for her mind.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. She's got to be a scientist. If she's not a scientist, but a Kardashian, leave her to one side. Okay.
Praise be to Allah. Excellent and excellent teaching. Thank you. So many people are showing you love. Great teachings. Great teachings. Thank you very much. Praise be to Allah. My next question for you, Brother Minister, I have two more questions actually. How have you kept your faith sustained your faith for so long? And what advice would you give to the future generations so that we can keep 10 toes down and have our faith strong?
I would say to minimize your exposure to negative people. Very important. And if you're invited into a negative conversation or a negative circle, always take the road or the angle of trying to evolve the conversation and turn it into positive discourse and conversation. But never just allow yourself, when you suffer something that, you know, is injurious to your spirit, just don't allow yourself to get bitter.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You get twisted, Chief. And the bitterness it causes disease and ill health, you know.
Yes,
so
sir.
You always have to, you know, just, I ain't gonna use profanity, but you have to have one of those attitudes, you know, where you understand. You just say, you know, whatever it. Do you understand?
Yes, sir. 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 Yes, sir.
You keep it moving. You got to know when to get up and to excuse yourself rather than to stay in something that's just causing you to go on a downward cycle. And this is why, as I was saying, going back to the relationships, you have to be careful who you're around, because if you're the type of person who, you're very proud and you're very stubborn, then you don't want to be in no kind of relationship with anybody who's also proud and stubborn. You need people who are the opposite of you. You just ain't gonna talk for the rest of the day, but somebody else knows how to break that kind of, atmosphere and bring joy back out of you. So I would rather maintain company, even if it's just a small circle of those who are mature and those who are more predisposed to positivity than they are to harping upon what could have been, what should have been, or if only. What could have been, what should have been, the if only crew, stay away from.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We accept what we got and we work every day to make it better.
Praise be to God. Yes, sir. Brother Minister, will you ever write a book on your personal journey in your life?
Yeah, I've been trying to do that for a while.
Beautiful.
So I just need someone to arrest me, if you will, and for us to get the information down. I actually am planning to get it done within the next 12 months or so. We really want to make a film on how Islam was birthed in Europe and how the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is manifested through our beloved Messiah, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. What miracle that is, because it really is a miracle. Because we're not supposed to be having this conversation. Remember, the mere fact that the government would ban the minister after knowing who he is, they wanted to sentence all of us to perpetual ignorance and perpetual mental and spiritual death. That was the thinking in their mind. Because for you to know that a man is a divine leader, teacher, and guide, for you to know the man is the Messiah, as the Quran says, that the enemies of Muhammad knew his identity even before Muhammad grew into the knowledge of who he was. The enemy knew who he was. So if they know who the minister was and is, and sought to stop him from coming over here to do his work in raising us up and commissioning us to be foundational stones of a new world order, then they're evil of wanting to sentence us all to death.
Yes, sir.
Allah God will visit the same evil intent they had for us. He will visit it back on them. I honestly am a firm believer in that.
Yes, sir.
It gives me joy to know that we have, jumped out of the crab bucket and barrel that they wanted to sentence us to perpetual destruction in, and that the God found a way of changing his form from physicality, from a beautiful person like the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, and dissolving himself in audio cassette tape.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Praise be to Allah. Okay, just my last two questions for you, Brother Medicine. Thank you all. You have so many people showing you love and supporting you. I know that as a drill instructor, someone who loves drill, the London FOI drilled before in the drill competition back in the day. The sisters have drilled last year. Will inshallah, we go back, go back what was normal. Will you all drill again?
Well, we will definitely drill again under the proviso that when we extend an invitation to you to come over for a couple of months to train the drill team.
Oh man, it would be my honor, sir. It would be my honor.
That's the proviso.
Yes, sir. It will be my honor, sir.
Because the sisters were able to really step up their drill expression last Savior's Day, because we invited Sister Tadara from Chicago.
Yes, sir.
She came and she stayed for nearly 2 weeks, and she trained the sisters magnificently, her and her young daughter.
Yes,
and, it was a great thing. So the only thing that's missing now is for a great drill instructor like yourself to come and, instill your scientific techniques.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It would be my honor, sir.
It would be ours.
Praise be to Allah.
I'm going to hold you to that. So as
Man, brother, my word is bond. So you got my word.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So as soon as the quarantine is lifted, you know, and you can carve out 10 days out of your schedule, then, you know, it would be our honor to have you come over so that we can refresh the drill team here and learn from the magnificent skills that you have developed.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. My last question for you, sir, is, and so many people are giving you so much love and showing you comments. When it's over, I'm sure you can go read the comments, sir. I want to stress this again. I thank you. This is my first time, even though you knew me and my siblings growing up, watched us grow up. I never had a conversation with you because we were always taught, "Assalamu alaikum, just keep it moving." But I've learned so much of your spirit and the spirit of the believers over there. We thank you all for your sacrifice. Thank your family, your children, your grandchildren, all of your student laborers and the believers. What would you like your legacy to be, sir?
That I never quit on supporting the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. If I can continue going until he's safely on the wheel, brother, I would to have that as a legacy, that I soldiered with him until Allah took him to himself.
Praise be to Allah. Praise be to Allah. Well, thank you, sir. Thank you all for your kind words and your comments. I love you, brother minister, and I love
you too, sir.
I love your spirit. I love the spirit. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Because many of us have forgotten until you explained it in your language that England is the mother, and you explain, because we sometimes forget. We just about the fall of America, but our people have been catching hell all over this world. So may Allah kill all of our enemies. So I love you.
That's right. I
thank you all for watching the People's Podcast. I have another guest coming up very shortly. Assalamu alaikum.